this is not a nerdy episode, or maybe it is, but I feel like we should go ahead and say something very interesting at the front end to capture your attention, just to keep you with us. The fact that you've clicked on the episode means you must like us. But presidential libraries aren't just libraries of books. And when a president accepts a gift from a foreign head of state, it becomes the property of the American people, as the president works on our behalf. So there are gifts in libraries and museums across the U.S. that technically belong to all of us. So we're going to talk about some of those libraries that exist in the southern United States today. Meet you at the table.
I'm Lainey.
And I'm Laura Beth.
And we are
Steel Magnolias.
The strength of steel with the grace of a magnolia.
We are here to have uplifting conversations about life in the South.
And we've got plenty of room at our table. So pull up a chair.
Welcome back to the Steel Magnolias podcast. And if you have not followed us on Instagram, then you may not know we just crossed our 150th episode.
That's impressive.
And it is.
It really is.
I was just astonished that we were at that number. But oftentimes we do have people ask us, how do you still have topics? Like, that's a lot of topics you've already covered. So I feel like today is a perfect example of where in the world your roster of topics, Lainey, comes from. I don't know if I'll ever know, but
always changing, but always long still. List.
Where did presidential libraries even come from?
Okay,
because it's not
the idea of the
yeah.
Okay, I think it came in my mind when I had a conversation with some friends of ours who somebody in their family actually gave a gift to the Clintons that is in the Clinton presidential
museum.
Library in Little Rock.
Okay.
And they had been to see it and everything. And so
that's wild.
That is kind of wild. But anyhow, I think that's kind of what put it on my radar. Of like, oh yeah, that's in Arkansas. And there's others in the South. I used to live in Atlanta for a period of time, and that's where the Jimmy Carter presidential library was, and they would have events on the grounds there and different things like that. So I just thought this is that could be an interesting topic to talk about, the ones that are in the South.
Right.
And
it's not exclusively Southern. They're all over the U.S.
They're all over.
But we do have several that are right here in our backyard. And I think it's interesting they're even called libraries, because they do not always include bookshelves like we would envision a library. A lot of them include archives, but I think a better name would just be museum and research center.
You're probably right. I've been to other libraries that have more than just books.
Right.
For instance, if any of you ever find yourself in London, one of my favorite things to mention to people is do not miss the British Library.
See, I would not think
it is a library. It is free to go in, but it includes all of these displays, mostly of, it's all British literature and music.
Okay.
So they'll have like original Alice in Wonderland.
Wow.
Book from. They'll have Beatles songs written on like a piece of notebook paper,
right?
That is preserved there in the library. Pride and Prejudice, like they have some really amazing things there that are not just books,
right? See, I would hear British Library and I would think this is for the locals to go check a book out.
And it is partially that as well, but it's so much more, and it's free. So I had a great time seeing that and would go back again. So I think that's kind of the concept. So these libraries are meant to preserve historical materials, support research as well. Absolutely.
But to just create exhibits that educate and inspire us to remember what each of these presidencies held. Like
That's right.
What their
each administration had its own flavor. And
yes,
etc.
What they encountered in history and what
That's
they
right.
yeah.
And another thing I think is really cool about these is if you get the opportunity to tour the White House,
okay,
it does not include the Oval Office. When you tour the White House,
okay.
Now, you may get some strange opportunity to get to see it.
Right. Some special pass if you know somebody.
But typically, that's not on a tour of the
right.
White House.
Right.
For obvious reasons. I mean, security reasons, really all kinds of reasons. Mm-hmm. They're maybe in there working or meeting. So most
it is a
of
functioning place.
Exactly. Most of these include an exact replica of the Oval Office of that time.
That's so cool.
And I think that's really cool.
That's so cool.
You can get kind of a picture of what that may have been like.
So are there about 15 of these?
Total?
Yeah.
Probably. That sounds right.
So when I first started thinking
5
about
in
that,
the South.
I was thinking, okay, so why are there not one for every president?
Oh, great question. I thought that too.
Yeah.
Well,
feels like there should be, but
let me tell a little intro history.
Okay.
Here. So President Franklin D. Roosevelt believed that the papers, books, and memorabilia from his administration were part of the heritage of the United States.
True.
And that they should be preserved and made available to the public.
Okay.
So in December 1938, he made an announcement that he planned to build a new facility, a presidential library.
Okay.
On his estate in Hyde Park, New York. So he raised all the money and built the library and then donated the building and its contents to the National Archives.
Wow. So as you just stated, he did it. He gave the land, he raised the money, and that's still in effect today. Like, you can't use federal funds to go build a building or use federal land to put these on. It's up to the administration, even if you decide to do this after your presidency.
Okay.
You can't go back and use federal funds or pull from federal budgets. So to get the ball rolling, a former president has to basically create a nonprofit and raise hundreds of millions of dollars.
Wow.
So it's quite an undertaking.
And they're usually fairly large. I mean,
Yeah.
many acres of land and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we have 5 in the South.
All right, let's start going through them.
I just went kind of in order of when they were president.
Oh, that's
okay?
exactly how I did it.
Okay.
Yep.
So the first would be Lyndon Johnson.
Yep.
In Austin, Texas, near the campus of the University of Texas.
Yep. It's open to the public right now. In fact, all of these are. I'll just go ahead and state a blanket statement. Like, COVID restrictions changed things. But right now, as of spring of 2022, these are open to the public, and they're all ticketed.
And we had this on our brain because yesterday was President's Day.
Yes.
So that's another reason we're doing this right now,
Yes.
because that holiday kind of sprung this to the top of the list of topics. But yeah, so if you find yourself in Austin, this might be a fun thing to do as a family.
Yeah. So some highlights, as you mentioned, Oval Office replica. We got a letter from Jackie Kennedy. You've got the voting rights desk where you can browse through like a interactive voting rights display or exhibit.
Yeah, that was a big part of that administration.
Yeah. Pick up a phone in the Great Society Gallery, specifically the first column about civil rights, J. Edgar Hoover or Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
So this is something I think is so fascinating. You can actually listen to phone calls through a receiver of the phone from that time.
Incredible.
Apparently, the recordings are remarkably good and very intimate.
Wow.
Almost like getting the feeling of eavesdropping.
Yeah.
On an extension.
Yeah, exactly.
Over conversations that happened 50 years ago. That's so crazy. Perhaps the conversations from the days after JFK's assassination on November 22nd, 1963.
Whoa.
Things like that. There's a conversation between Johnson and Martin Luther King on November 25th, 1963. a conversation with he and Gerald Ford from that year. But apparently this conversation from December 2nd, 1963 with Jackie Kennedy is one that will
bring you to tears,
give you chills kind of thing.
I bet.
I think that's so wild.
Yeah. That is interesting that technology, we think we've come so far, and we have, but we also had a lot of technology, I guess, that preserved.
People were recording conversations before Richard Nixon, weren't they?
It's true. So if you are in the Austin area, LBJ Library right there, available to the public. Tickets are $13 with discounts given to seniors, military, college students, etc.
Yes, and I think 4 to 12, under 12 are free.
Yeah.
So that'd be a fun do. Next up would be the Jimmy Carter Library down in Atlanta.
Yep.
Sits on 35 gorgeous acres.
Have you been by there before?
I have been on that property, yes. Okay. I did not actually do this museum. You know, when you're in your 20s.
I know. Things are different priorities.
I put my dollars into music festivals, not presidential libraries at that time.
I get it. I'd be the same way.
Anyhow. So here, one of the things that I think would be really special and cool would be his Nobel Peace Prize is on view for all to see, as well as, again, a lot of the same things. The Oval Office, how that would have looked. But you can see a lot of the work that he did, not only in the administration, but after. He's known for doing a lot of Habitat for Humanity work and things like that.
I did think this dramatic presentation of a day in the life of the president, it's got 13-foot screens. It's a walk-through cabin setting for the crucial Camp David meetings.
Oh, yeah.
And there's like an interactive map table that takes you with the Carters to monitor elections and fight diseases and just different things that were part of that administration's
That's awesome.
Role. So, yeah. And like you said, I mean, amazing setting, great view of the Atlanta skyline, apparently.
Yes. Just, lovely grounds. And I think most of these libraries also include the limousine of that president. So that would be kind of interesting to see even how cars have changed.
I love seeing that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's so fun. Okay.
So that one... similar pricing, I think, $10 to $12, free under 16, etc. Mm-hmm. Okay, next up, George Herbert Bush.
Yep. George Sr., as I always call him. Yep.
Yes, College Station, Texas, near the Texas A&M campus.
Yeah. It's actually
Is it actually on campus?
Yeah. I think that was one of the, as I mentioned earlier, they're responsible for getting the grounds and raising the funds. So I think sometimes colleges
will
do participate,
trying to get it nearer on their campus. Mm-hmm. Well, artifacts here inside this museum include a World War II Avenger torpedo bomber, similar to the one George Bush flew during World War II.
Wow.
As well as replicas of the Camp David and Air Force One offices. Yeah. I think that would be cool to see.
Very cool.
Also, another thing kind of importance here, the Bushes are actually buried on the grounds here.
That's right.
As well as their daughter, who died at 3 of leukemia.
Robin.
Yeah. So they're all three buried there.
All 3 headstones are there. And it's sort of off-site. I mean, you can walk to it, but like you can't drive up there. So there's a sidewalk or some sort of path to it, but it's sort of a little secluded area,
which makes
where
sense.
They're buried.
Yeah, make it a nice place to visit.
Well, I think it's funny that, collections of artifacts of 8 years and time as a vice president as well.
Leading the CIA. I'm sure that was...
They've got lots of, gifts and things. So I was just thinking, well, it must be nice to have a place to put random gifts.
Right.
All the figurines and sculptures from that person that you're like, thank you.
What do I do with this Chinese vase or this Egyptian?
Yeah. So as I mentioned on the front end of our episode, when a president accepts a gift, it is technically from a foreign head, it's technically property of the American people. But the president may choose to retain some of the gifts at the end of their term. I've never heard any of this. So for the gifts from foreign heads of state, the president must purchase the gift at the appraised value.
Ah.
For domestic gifts or gifts from foreign private citizens under a set dollar amount, which is currently $415. So the president may keep them at those as he chooses.
Okay, so if it's under that price, you get to keep it.
Yes.
Most of them aren't going to be under that price because
they
they give usually dignitaries give unusual special gifts that are prized in some form or fashion. Like be it's out of jade or it's from an old time period. So it's going to be probably usually more than that.
Yeah. Imagine like the Antique Roadshow, like some of the things where you're like, that is worth $12,000.
Right.
Yes.
That's what they get.
So for any domestic gifts or gifts from foreign private citizens over that set amount, the president must declare them on their taxes.
Now, this is fascinating because we won't mention names.
Okay.
But I know that this gets fishy waters because
I'm sure.
I've heard of some furniture that's left the White House and things that where it's like, is that legit? Can you do that?
I know. I wonder if there's a specific role or a position or a job that's like the roster keeper of all gifts. Yeah. So if the president does not formally indicate their intent to keep or purchase or declare the gifts, they're automatically transferred to the National Archives.
Okay.
So anyway,
if it didn't sneak out the back door, it's supposed to be archived.
Yeah. Okay.
Next up is the Clinton Presidential Library in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Right.
Like I mentioned, we have someone who apparently has, I think it's some kind of eagle sculpture or something.
Oh, cool.
There in that library.
Okay.
Well, their family gave it as a gift.
This one has over 100,000 objects and works of art.
Wow.
So I don't know if that's the most, but that seems like the largest number that I saw. So they received a lot of gifts from everyone imaginable, including citizens of the U.S. And I feel like there's a really off-color comment I could insert here about objects collected from President Clinton, but I will keep that to myself. But I'm sure you know where my
no
mind
dresses, no dresses or cigars. Well, this particular museum, or I'm wanting to say museum because it feels more like a museum.
Library.
Also has a restaurant. I thought this was kind of funny. It's called 42, which seems so apropos.
Like he was the 42nd president.
He was the 42nd president. So I don't know. He just seems like he's like the party guy. So he would have like a fun, chic restaurant.
Right.
And
complete with poker stations and
maybe,
other, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
Anyhow, it looked like pretty outdoor views and that kind of thing. So if you find yourself in Little Rock, that might be a fun stop.
I'm not sure why this particular library is getting this museum that's coming up, but they are doing a Women's Voices, Women's Votes exhibit that is going to be in the spring of this year, 2022. And it's going to commemorate that 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment and the 25th anniversary of the Fourth World Conference on Women. And it's going to just, have a different multimedia exhibit that's going to explore the risks that some of those women took and some of the males that, joined them in that fight. And that's those 2 episodes we did.
We did great on those. I loved those episodes.
When that anniversary actually happened.
So that would be a cool time to visit this particular library. In fact, you mentioned this, but many of the exhibits at all of these are always there.
Right.
And then other things, just like any museum, has, traveling exhibits and things that change out. And it keeps it interesting for those that are members.
In events, like you said.
Yeah.
So, if lots of lectures and educational series, but also probably a lot of parties and fundraisers too, be my guess.
It makes sense that a lot of these are on college campuses, though, because you think of how much research happens in locations like that.
Right.
So it's a natural fit.
Yeah. Yeah. For research. Yep. All right. Are we back to Texas now?
We're in Texas again.
So
3 of the 5 are Texas. I mean,
Of course. So big there. All right, so now we're down to George W.
In Dallas, on the campus of Southern Methodist University, SMU.
Yeah.
I think Baylor had pitched to have this one as well.
Did they?
But it ended up landing at SMU.
Okay. Well, I think one of the most fascinating things that I would love to see at this exhibit, because it was very much in a time frame where I was starting to understand history, is they have the bullhorn. Is that what you knew I was going to say?
No, well, I think they also have a big piece of one of the buildings that fell in New York.
So the famous sort of coming into New York City post 9/11 trip that George W. made, he picked up a bullhorn and really, fired up.
Rallied the troops.
Yes.
Because, we were also tender.
Yes.
And somebody yelled something out. I still remember this. And he said, "I can hear you. And the whole world's about to hear you, or about to hear us."
Yes, that's exactly
something
right.
along those lines. So
I wouldn't have remembered what he said. I just remember that it
and
inspired.
Got the
and it
crowd roared.
We needed it.
Yeah.
It was like a hug and a firing up at the same time.
Yeah.
So they have that bullhorn on display. That would be very cool to see.
I don't know if this is if they have any of this here, but he began painting.
Oh.
And has painted a lot of just people. He likes to paint people's faces and stuff. I don't know if they have any of that at this library, but that would be wonderful to see, I think.
This was one of the more expensive tickets of the ones we've talked about. This is a $26 entry fee, but again, discounts given to military students.
Free for
seniors.
active military. Yeah.
I feel like almost everyone was
They should
free.
be.
They should be.
I don't know if they are, but they should be.
Escorted in and a free tour guide.
There's also a pretty significant discount with the Dallas City Pass. So if you're in Dallas and you're, those city passes that like you pay a fee and you get discounts, or it includes admission to a lot of things.
Yeah.
If you're in Dallas and you're going to do several stops, that's a pretty significant discount.
Yeah.
Included in this. Now, we still have George W. and Laura with us, but they will be buried here.
Okay.
After their passing. So just like his parents are buried at their presidential library, this is where they will rest in peace.
Okay.
Their bodies. But it's also, you mentioned it's the most expensive. It's the largest of the five that we're mentioning here.
Okay.
I think the largest of all is the Ronald Reagan one in California.
Okay.
But that may be part of the reason the ticket price is higher, is the size.
Sure. Well, I figured it was for some reason, whether it be a more interactive, exhibit you get to partake in or whatever. So, well, that might be the one I'd want to go to if I had to choose one.
Well, it's also during your lifetime that you remember the most.
Exactly.
So that's...
But we said this, I think, before we even started recording. Any of these would be fantastic to visit, no matter what your political party.
Yeah, regardless of your thoughts on them as a person, they were the leader of our country in the free world for a period of time.
Yes.
So there's a lot of important things that happened, whether you agreed with everything they did or not.
Right. Yeah. It's a time capsule.
That's right.
Really, that you get to go look at. So,
and it would be worth seeing and taking your family to see.
Yeah. All right. Well, we just gave y'all some ideas for spring break or summer travel, or maybe you're already in one of these cities and you didn't even realize you had one, or you've been meaning to get over there.
Or you're like me and you were in your 20s and you're like, I'd rather put my money somewhere else, but it would be very interesting. Who knows what all you may see there.
All right. Well, that will do it for this episode. We'll be back with more Southern cultural topics next week.
Peace be with you, Laura Beth.
And also with y'all.